Hello and welcome. You're watching World Panorama with me, Aishwarya. Let us start the program with this week's top headlines. Donald Trump becomes the third U.S. president in history to be impeached. House of Representatives passes articles of impeachment on abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. Ex-Pakistan President Pervez Musharraf sentenced to death by hanging, found guilty of high treason following suspension of country's constitution in 2007. Musharraf is currently in self-exile in Dubai. Massive French protests against Macron's pension reforms enter third week. Travelers brace up for more transport disruptions over the Christmas holiday season after talks between government and unions fail to reach any truce. Crisis for a plane maker Boeing escalates. The company suspends production of its best-selling 737 MAX jetliner. MAX was grounded globally following two fatal crashes of the aircraft within 5 months. And former Prime Minister Tebboune sworn in as the new president of protest-hit Algeria, but his election fails to extinguish popular anger. Protesters call it a ploy by political elite to maintain a hold on power. The top story this week: Donald Trump became the third president in American history to be impeached on Wednesday night. Majority of House of Representatives voted in favor of the two articles of impeachment drawn up by the House Democrats. The impeachment sets up a trial in the Senate. However, the Republican Party there has a majority, making it almost impossible that the president will be removed from office. Donald Trump, who has denied any wrongdoing, has demanded an immediate impeachment trial in the Senate amid an impasse among Democrats and Republicans over when the trial may start. Donald Trump on Wednesday night became the third U.S. president in history to be impeached by the House of Representatives. The House voted on two charges: that the president had abused his power and that he had obstructed Congress. Nearly all Democrats voted for the charges and every Republican against. The vote sets up a trial in the Senate that will decide whether Trump remains in office. However, since President Trump's Republicans control the Senate, it is highly unlikely that he will be removed from power.
The articles are like an indictment. They're just a charge. Those charges are then tried in the Senate, presided over as judge by Chief Justice John Roberts, and all 100 senators sitting as jurors, and it takes a 2/3 vote, 67 senators, to convict and remove the president.
Both articles of impeachment were related to the Ukraine scandal. Trump is accused of pressurizing Ukraine to dig up damaging information on one of his main Democratic challengers for the presidency in 2020, Joe Biden, and his son, Hunter.
Today is a sad but necessary day for American democracy. The President of the United States is being impeached. And that is the right thing to do, because we have got to never forget that no individual in this country, certainly not the President of the United States, is above the law, is above the Constitution.
However, Trump remained defiant. He was addressing a campaign rally in Michigan as the voting in the House of Representatives took place. He accused the Democrats of envy and hatred. After the vote, the White House released a statement saying that the president was confident that he will be fully exonerated in the Senate trial.
With today's illegal, unconstitutional, and partisan impeachment, the do-nothing Democrats, and they are do-nothing, all they want to do is focus on this, what they could be doing, are declaring their deep hatred and disdain for the American voter.
Meanwhile, with Senate numbers stacked in favor of Trump's Republicans, Democrats are already unhappy at the way trial could be held. Nancy Pelosi has indicated it might delay sending the articles of impeachment to the Senate in order to bargain on the terms of the proceedings.
We have legislation approved by the Rules Committee that will enable us to decide how we will send over the articles of impeachment. We cannot name managers until we see what the process is on the Senate side, and I would hope that that will be soon, as we did with our legislation, our Resolution 660, to describe what the process would be. So far, we haven't seen anything that looks fair to us.
Irrespective of what happens in the Senate, being impeached places Donald Trump alongside only two other presidents in US's history, Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabhati. Former Pakistani President General Pervez Musharraf was sentenced to death by a special court in Islamabad in a treason case, making it the first time in the history of Pakistan that capital punishment has been announced for a former army chief. The order of the special court, which was headed by the Chief Justice of the Peshawar High Court, is subject to an appeal. Musharraf has been living in London and Dubai since 2014 after he got the permission to travel abroad on medical grounds, but despite court directives, he has not returned to Pakistan after 2016. The former military dictator is currently in the UAE capital, Dubai. Former Pakistan President and military ruler Pervez Musharraf sentenced to death for high treason following a 6-year legal case. A 3-member special court in Islamabad on Tuesday convicted Musharraf of violating the constitution by unlawfully declaring emergency rule in 2007 while he was in power.
ये केस गलत है और 10 दफा कहा है कि केस गलत है. इस केस के साथ दूसरे केस भी गलत है. जब सेक्रेटरी इंटीरियर को
This case is wrong. The emergency that Pervez Musharraf declared on November 3, 2007 was done on the advice of the Prime Minister and the other stakeholders. No one has worked for the development of Pakistan as much as Pervez Musharraf.
वो उस वक्त मुल्क की हक में था. वो नेकमेंट उस वक्त मुल्क के हक में था. तमाम लोगों ने उसको हेल किया है, एक्सेप्ट वन ग्रुप. और ये केस गलत है. जितनी जनरल परवेज मुशर्रफ ने इस मुल्क के अंदर तरक्की दी है, जितनी कानून को इज्जत दी है, आप लोग को मीडिया को जितनी इज्जत दी है, आज तक किसी ने नहीं दी.
However, the death penalty is unlikely to be carried out. General Musharraf was allowed to leave Pakistan in 2016. The 76-year-old former leader has lived in self-imposed exile in Dubai in the UAE for more than 3 years. He has the option to appeal the verdict. The military reacted angrily, saying that legal process seems to have been ignored.
परवेज मुशर्रफ साहब पर गद्दारी का मुकदमा भी था. परवेज मुशर्रफ पर बेनजीर के कत्ल का भी.
The court has sentenced Pervez Musharraf to death, which is certainly a good step and in accordance with justice. But my question is, who is going to bring Pervez Musharraf to Pakistan to carry out the sentence? Who is going to carry out the death sentence?
लेकिन मैं सवाल ये करता हूँ कि परवेज मुशर्रफ को सजाए मौत देने के लिए पाकिस्तान लाएगा कौन? उन्हें सजाए मौत कौन देगा?
As army chief, Musharraf orchestrated the Kargil conflict in Kashmir that took almost Pakistan to war with India. Pervez Musharraf seized power in a 1999 coup and was president from 2001 to 2008. In November 2007, General Musharraf suspended the constitution and imposed emergency rule, a move that sparked protests. He resigned in 2008 to avoid the threat of impeachment and went into an exile. But Musharraf returned to Pakistan in 2013 to contest the general election. However, Nawaz Sharif, whom he deposed in the 1999 coup, was elected the Prime Minister. Nawaz Sharif then initiated a treason trial against General Musharraf. In March 2014, The former general was charged for high treason. He was indicted on a total of 5 charges, including 3 counts of subverting, suspending, and changing the country's constitution, firing Pakistan's Chief Justice, and imposing emergency rule. General Musharraf argued the case was politically motivated. In 2016, General Musharraf travelled to Dubai after a travel ban was lifted, and he has refused to appear before the court despite multiple orders. Musharraf was the 3rd military commander to rule Pakistan and the 2nd to cause suspension of the nation's constitution, but he is the first to have been convicted for treason and awarded death penalty. Interestingly, Nawaz Sharif too has been sentenced to a 10-year jail term in a corruption case in 2017 when he was forced to quit. He too is in exile in London. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. In an escalation of the crisis facing the giant plane maker Boeing, the company has announced suspending the production of its 737 MAX jetliner in January. The MAX was grounded globally in March following 2 fatal crashes of the aircraft within 5 months. The 2 accidents in Indonesia and Ethiopia claimed a combined 346 lives. Chicago-based Boeing plays a big role in the US's economy. It is the largest US manufacturing exporter and one of the nation's top private employers, and the MAX is its best-selling plane. Boeing 737 aircraft continues to remain grounded. As the Chicago-based company struggles to get approval from regulators to put the plane back in the air. As a result, on Monday, the company announced that it will temporarily stop producing its grounded 737 MAX jet starting in January. Production would halt at its plant with 1,200 employees in Renton, Washington, near Seattle.
Suspending production of a commercial aircraft is something that has been very rarely done. It truly is an unprecedented decision, and it is one that has massive impact to Boeing and its suppliers and the airlines. The airlines that have MAX jets on order are eager to get them. The ones that have them in their fleets are eager to get them flying again.
The MAX is Boeing's most important jet, but it has been grounded since March after crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia that killed a total of 346 people. Boeing is redesigning the automated control system, thought to have been the primary cause of the crashes.
We have looked deeply at the MAX and its design and the processes over the last year. And the software update, we have extraordinary confidence in. We're also working on updated training packages for pilots and maintainers. So it's a holistic solution that will give us all confidence that this airplane will be one of the safest ever to fly.
The suspension of the 737 MAX has already cost Boeing around $9 billion. Ever since the suspension, orders for the 737 MAX dried up, and it wasn't until last month that Boeing recorded its first new orders, a total of only 30 planes since the grounding. In the meantime, the company continued to produce the planes, but with no timeline yet of when it will get the approval to fly, Boeing is now focusing on delivering the ones that it has in storage, 400 aircraft, to its customers. While many airlines around the world have the planes on order, delivery was halted to allow Boeing's engineers to develop software fixes.
They take safety seriously, and it's very clear that they are working on many of the technology solutions to make the airplane a safer one when it goes back into service. But they don't have all the problems identified and fixed yet. And I think that they are wise to consider pausing production.
Even if no employees are laid off, ceasing production still will cut into US's economic output because of Boeing's huge footprint in the country's manufacturing sector. The shutdown also is likely to ripple through Boeing's vast network of 900 companies that make engines, bodies, and other parts for the 737. Experts say the shutdown would probably hinder the US economy in the coming months and could worsen the nation's trade balance. After all, it is the US's biggest single manufactured export product. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. In World Panorama, we'll take a very short break here, and after the break, we tell you about the ongoing protests in France. As a result, travelers are bracing up for more transport disruption over the Christmas holiday season. All the details coming up ahead. Stay tuned. Nationwide strikes in France entered their third week. The unions are opposing President Emmanuel Macron's plans to streamline France's state pension system and push people to work up till 64 instead of the legal retirement age of 62. French travelers are bracing up for more transport disruption over the Christmas holiday season as well, after talks between the government and the trade unions failed and no Christmas truce could be reached. French police and protesters clashing in Paris on Tuesday, as demonstrations over pension reform continue. Police fired tear gas and stun grenades at demonstrators in central Paris's Place de la Nation. Protesters dressed in black overturned bins, tried to smash advertising hoardings and hurled projects at police lines.
President Macron has lost the battle for public opinion. He has lost. He thinks people are stupid, but they're less stupid than he thinks. People have understood that they have a lot to lose. They themselves, their children, and the future generation.
Earlier in the day, French union activists cut electricity to nearly 1 lakh homes or offices. Eiffel Tower staff walked off the job. Even Paris opera workers joined in Tuesday's nationwide protests across France as workers rallied against the government's plan to raise the retirement age to 64 from the present 62. Thousands of workers rallied through French cities, from Brittany on the Atlantic to the Pyrenees in the south. Hospital workers, Air France staff, and people from across the French workforce have joined in the strikes and protests.
Our main demand is social justice. For many years, especially since this government took power, we've been seeing our social rights melt under the sun, and this pension reform is the last straw.
Meanwhile, commuters are having a tough time in view of the ongoing strikes, taking sometimes hours to get to work. Tourists are cancelling plans. On Tuesday, trains, flights and the Paris metro all faced major disruptions. Monument closed, read a sign on the glass wall circling the base of the Eiffel Tower, which was shut on Tuesday for the second time since the strike started 5th of December. Police in Paris also barricaded the presidential Élysée Palace.
It's cumbersome. I've been in Paris for a few days, 3 days, and I have had enough. I'm getting more annoyed. I'm not very aware of the context of the strike, but I think it's a bit too much, especially during the holidays.
Despite more than 2 weeks of the strikes, French President Emmanuel Macron and his government stayed firm. The Prime Minister declared his total determination to reshape the pension system, calling it unfair and destined to collapse into debt.
Mais nous avons dit clairement quel était notre projet.
We have clearly stated our project, clearly what our project is, and on this project, on the creation of a universal pension system, my determination, that of the government and that of the entire majority, is total. I am saying this clearly, total.
Je le dis calmement, elle est totale.
As the strikes approach the 3-week mark, there has been a hardening of rhetoric from both sides. The possibility of declaring a Christmas truce also slipped away.
Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And here is a look at some more international news stories in Global Buzz. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has apologized for going on a holiday in Hawaii this week while the nation's bushfire crisis worsened. The crews are battling over 100 fires amid a heat wave which has produced the nation's two hottest days on record. Two volunteers firefighters died in a road accident on Thursday while deployed to a huge blaze near Sydney. Scott Morrison said that he would end his leave early. His absence this week has drawn condemnation and protests. Australia's bushfire emergency has killed 8 people, destroyed more than 700 houses, and scorched millions of hectares since September. A firearms buyback scheme launched in New Zealand after the Christchurch mosque shootings ended on Friday, with gun control groups hailing its success despite opposition from some firearms owners. The 15th of March attacks, in which 51 Muslim worshippers were killed, prompted a swift ban on assault rifles and military-style semi-automatic weapons used by the lone gunman. The key element of the ban was a buyback scheme accompanied by an amnesty, giving gun owners a payment and a guarantee of no questions asked when they handed their weapons deemed illegal under new laws. And Syrian regime airstrikes and artillery fire on Tuesday killed 24 civilians in Idlib, the last major opposition bastion in the northwest of the country. The terrorist-held region is supposed to be protected by a month-old ceasefire deal, but deadly bombardment has continued. The Idlib region, which is home to some 3 million people, is controlled by the country's former Al-Qaeda affiliate. The Damascus regime has repeatedly vowed to take back control of it. The pro-government forces launched a blistering offensive against the region in April. Abdelmadjid Tebboune has been sworn in as the new president of Algeria. However, his election has disappointed protesters who believe that the poll was rigged in favor of the old regime. They say that new faces must be brought in to organize real elections in a country where the winner of the presidential elections has always been easy to guess. However, Tebboune is looking to appease the protesters, saying that he is ready to meet with their leaders, to listen to them and take care of their concerns. Algeria swears in new president. The country's election commission announced that Abdelmadjid Tebboune, a 74-year-old former prime minister, received the maximum 58.15% of the vote in Thursday's election.
أقسم بالله العلي العظيم
أقسم بالله العلي العظيم
أن أحترم الدين الإسلامي وأمجده.
I swear to God Almighty that I will respect the Islamic religion and defend the Constitution and watch over the continuity of the state.
However, turnout in Thursday's election was just 41%, reflecting the frustration of many Algerians who had hoped to see new faces among the candidates. After the announcement of the presidential results, tens of thousands of people took to the streets of the Algerian capital, Algiers, in protest. Protesters demanded that the whole political establishment be swept away.
President Tebboune is fake. We came out to say that there is no president and this protest movement in Algeria won't stop. And the politicians don't represent us. They chose their own president and we aren't going to step back.
The polling day itself was marred by protests and calls for people to boycott the election. 5 candidates, including Tebboune, were criticized for being closely linked with the rule of ousted leader Abdelaziz Bouteflika. It is noteworthy that President Bouteflika stepped down following mass demonstrations across the country. For nearly a year, thousands of Algerians have protested every Friday in the capital and other cities against any elections under the current government. They wanted all officials associated with the regime of ousted President Bouteflika to be removed from office.
Newly elected President Tebboune does not represent us, neither do the other 4 candidates. We said no to elections with candidates being close to former President Bouteflika. We do not agree with what is happening. As youth, our future is destroyed. We are jobless.
However, newly elected President Tebboune is trying to appease the people. He vowed to reach out to pro-democracy protesters who have been holding protests since February and boycotted the elections.
We must quickly overcome the current difficult political situation to address the fundamental problems of the country by adopting the comprehensive strategy based on a clear political vision aimed to restoring the confidence of the population in the country.
Tebboune briefly served as Prime Minister in 2017 under ex-President Bouteflika. He held several ministerial posts in successive Bouteflika governments. Tebboune, during his election campaign, tried to put forward a clean image, but he is having a hard time making people forget his ties to the Bouteflika clan. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And with this, we wrap up this edition of World Panorama, but we leave you with a sweet treat ahead of Christmas, and a massive one that. Covering 80 square meters, this sweet treat was made in Poland, made to resemble a city, complete with houses, towers, moving trains, and even a windmill. It took 3 bakers 4 months to create this masterpiece. The impressive castle has handcrafted gingerbread people, animals, and trees, along with a smiling Santa greeting kids waiting for presents. So take a look at this gingerbread wonderland as I take your leave. Merry Christmas to all of you. Bye-bye.